Great. It's showing us live on Facebook and YouTube, so I'm just going to check on my end. Great. Well, I'm about done over here, so I'll get us kicked off. I see a couple of people that are already starting to hop onto our broadcast. If you are starting to tune in, thank you so much for carving out some 30 minutes out of your day to pay attention to our Friday broadcast. Please do me the favor of giving us a thumbs up. Start giving me some comments or compliments or just any random comments in the comment section so that I can give you some shout outs for being on here with us this morning. Now, most of you already know me. I'm Juliette Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you back to our Facebook page, of course, and then to those of you that are on here for the very first time, I hope we don't scare you off. You hit that like button, hit the follow so you can stay in tune on everything that we release as we release it, whether it's videos, content, or other resources that are available to you and the overall community. Now, if you are coming back to us, then I'm sure you are already familiar with the features that are available to you. The comment section is where I like to turn to for any questions throughout the conversation. It's also where we like to engage with you after our speaker has shared a few words. So make sure that you familiarize yourself with that section. I already see a couple of folks, Linda Delano, Councillor Seymour, good morning to you. Thank you for chiming in and providing us with a nice comment. So this is your example to you. Hopefully you have a picture that you are proud of. I know Rich has one with his beautiful wife, Shelly, that's over there. So that will display and that will reflect any comments or questions that you bring our way. Now, most of you are already familiar with our COVID-19 resource page that's available on the westminsterchamber.biz website, COVID-19-updates. It's where you can find a lot of the updates that we're aware of, city, county, state, federal level, and it's also where you can see some of the videos. So if you know of people that are not very tech savvy, they don't like Facebook and they don't like to access YouTube, where this is streaming right now under the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, direct them over to the website where we actually link some of those videos for them. Of course, we're on a variety of other platforms at Westy Chamber on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn, where we share numerous types of information. Sometimes it's redundant office time. It's pretty different from one platform to the other so that we can engage with you through those levels. So long-winded, but I wanted to throw that out there. You all know that I like to close out the week with either an elected or an update from city, county, or state administrative levels. So today I have the pleasure of having the City of Westminster's Fire Department, their fire chief, Doug Hall, to share a few words about their department, how they've handled COVID, maybe what that has looked like in terms of their day-to-day interaction. And then, of course, to lightly touch on some of the fires. You know, last week we had with us the American Red Cross, who shared a variety of resources and information and things that they were doing, boots on the ground. It's always nice to kind of see what people are doing here locally. I also want to, before I mute myself, Chief, it looks like we're starting to get some people who are engaging, so I just wanted to go ahead and throw that out there. Parker Brown is giving you a good morning to you, and of course to myself. And Brian Dice is also sharing, thank God it's Friday. Good morning to everybody. So with that, Chief, I am going to mute myself and the floor is yours to get going and share what you would like to with our group.
Okay, thank you, Juliette. It's a privilege to be here and good morning, everyone. I have 4 objectives to share with you today. One, as Juliette said, is to give you just a brief high-level overview of what the Westminster Fire Department is all about, sort of what we do. I want to talk to you a little bit about the COVID situation and how that's impacted fire department operations. I'll share with you a little bit of information that I have about the wildland fires. I am not a wildland fire expert, but I track it because of the interest that we have with some of our personnel. And then my 4th objective is to answer any outstanding questions you may have about fire department and EMS operations. So just to share with you a little bit of information about the department, the Westminster Fire Department has 143 total personnel. 123 of them are assigned to emergency operations. That means they're in the fire stations. We have 6 fire stations strategically located throughout the city. We run about, last year was a little over 12,000 calls. We're on target this year to exceed that. And that's interesting because if you recall back in March, April, and probably most of May, for the most part, things were shut down. And you remember the streets being barren. We had a significant lull, decrease in the number of calls during that period. But I check at the end of every month, and at the end of October, we were on track to exceed last year's call number. So we're seeing, even with that lull, that decrease, significant number of calls continuing within the city. We provide, obviously, emergency operations through fire and EMS. With EMS, the Emergency Medical Services, we provide advanced life support transport, paramedics. So we transport to most of the North area hospitals. We provide hazardous materials response. We have all types of specialty rescue teams that deal with dive rescue, water rescue, high angle rescue, trench, confined space. Our Fire Prevention Bureau, many of you in the business sector are well acquainted with our Bureau activities because we do business inspections, and we have a fairly comprehensive business inspection program, which I believe is one of those contributing factors that allows us to state we have a very low fire loss as it relates to our business and commercial sector. We have a really strong proactive public education program that addresses all the different sectors in the community, schools, the business sector, and in terms of fire prevention, that type of thing. And then fire investigations. We have a fairly extensive fire investigation program so that we can track what's going on and that type of thing. So let's talk a little bit about COVID. Never have we experienced anything more challenging than COVID to the fire department operations. Back in March, when the city took some initial actions, we closed down. I gave the directive to close down the fire stations to all visiting guests, family members, etc. So the stations, for the most part, have been closed down. We have ceased all public education activities, most of the inspection activities in existing businesses, because we're focused on protecting our people. Protecting our people protects their families. And it's been interesting. Most of you know probably that we are seeing across the state, certainly across the metro area, a significant uptick, increase in the number of COVID patients. We're dealing with that internally. Our people, when they're off duty, are as at much risk as any other citizens. They need to really practice the same precautions that everyone else is being encouraged. Right now, we have about 10 to 12. I know for sure there were 10 yesterday. I've gotten some information. There may be 1 or 2 more employees reporting potential symptoms. We have 10 to 12 people off because of the COVID stuff. We have 2 or 3 that are have tested positive. We've been fortunate to have 4, 5, 6 tests come back negative. We're still awaiting some tests, but this is due to exposure that the employees are having off duty. We have an extensive protection program when they're on duty, particularly when they're interfacing with our patients and on other emergency incidents when there's that potential for interaction with the public. Full-blown N95 face masks, face shields, gloves, gowns. We feel pretty good about our protective practices for our personnel in general. In the stations, we have prohibited the firefighters from being together in a group setting within the fire station. So we have moved with some individual dining tables and that type of thing, because they work 48-hour shifts, so they're taking 4 to 5 to 6 meals inside that station environment. They have to isolate and segregate, and when they are within close proximity, we expect them to be in mask and any other appropriate protection. When they're done with their station duties, cleaning and checking out the equipment, they are directed to isolate into their individual sleeping quarters, their individual living quarters. And so they don't like it. They're not used to it. They're not comfortable with it, but they're doing pretty doggone good. And we continually reinforce that. I've been in the fire stations only 3 times since March. And it's just a struggle not to be able to interact with them in person, one-on-one, but that's the circumstances. And by all current appearances, we're going to be doing this for many, many more weeks. We experienced a pretty significant number of potential COVID patients in March, April, and May, and then things, as you might recall, plateaued down a little bit, but our numbers now have gone back up even with potential patients. And I say potential because it's difficult for us. We assess the patients, and if they're exhibiting respiratory or other medical symptoms similar to COVID, we sort of track that. But it's difficult for us for a number of reasons to get information back from the hospitals. Sometimes patients are released pretty quickly and that type of thing. But the numbers that we're seeing have dramatically increased in potential COVID patients over the last 3 to 4 weeks. And I would surmise we're probably even exceeding what we saw back in April and May, that type of time frame. We have had a very active training program with our neighboring agencies because we do so much interaction and mutual aid and automatic aid. We've curtailed that. We have implemented a lot of directives, so to speak, that is intended to specifically minimize the exposure that our people have with people not within those work groups and teams. Even the internal trainings, where we used to have larger group trainings at the drill tower and other training centers, we've curtailed that to where it's very much a minimal approach. Westminster joined 7 other North Area agencies in managing a shared recruit academy. Presently, we have 4 individuals in the North Area Recruit Academy that exceeds 40 personnel. We decided in August, the North Area Fire Chiefs, that we would minimize that exposure. So we have created 3 different groupings. Our partner in the training academy is the Adams County Fire District. So they have, I think, somewhere around 8 or 9, 10 people in the academy. We have 4. That sounds like 8, but it's really 4. And so that it's a pod that they do their training. So we reduce the overall exposure to the overall group. And thank goodness they've been able to remain healthy. We anticipate with our protective practices, they will stay healthy. And thank goodness they're going to get to experience the end of the academy next Wednesday. I say the end of the academy, not graduation, because they're not going to be able to participate in a well-deserved graduation ceremony. We've made the decision to curtail that. The instructor cadre, the group of instructors that are leading them, will do the badge presentation, certificate presentations. So unlike all the other shared academies we've had for the past 10 years, they will not have their family members, their friends present while they get a chance to graduate from the academy. And it's a sad state of affairs for them, but we'll figure out once we get around the corner here with this COVID stuff, how to support them and take care of that. But it's ongoing. There are some challenges. We are very cognizant of the PPE issue. We're starting to hear in the news media some PPE shortages. I would say as the fire chief right now, we're okay. We have some pretty responsible people monitoring this and tracking our burn rate, so to speak, the amount that we're using and that type of thing. But I'm a little nervous that as things get a little bit more down the road, that we could run into issues of PPE availability. But we're on top of that. We're going to see how things go. I will point out that there's been several of these Westminster brewery outfits that have provided us with sanitizer, and there's 2 or 3 of them. And we just want to thank them. They've been very, very helpful in that particular regard. I'll transition now to the wildland stuff. We have a wildland team. We have 2 vehicles that are designated as what is referred to as a Type 6 vehicle. That's a brush truck. It's a smaller vehicle than a regular fire truck. We do not specifically have in Westminster a wildland fire issue. We have some open space, but I assure you, fires in an open space is a heck of a lot different than a wildland fire. But we do have people that are trained and qualified to serve in various capacities of wildland. We have some safety officers. We have some division commanders that manage major sectors on these fires. And in past years, we have had the practice of deploying 2 teams within the state or even nationally with one of the vehicles. We do this because there's no financial burden to the community. We go to fires that offer the opportunity for these people to be paid from the funds utilized to support that fire, and then the state and or federal, depending on if it's a state fire or federal fire, then reimburses us for any overtime we would incur. So it's a zero cost to the city. And the same thing with the vehicle. There's a standard rate that the state and or the feds will pay, and then we take that money and put it into a fund so that when the vehicle needs to be repaired or replaced, again, it's a zero cost to the community. Now we will go through a mutual aid agreement into our neighboring agencies without that cost, but we've had for 30 plus years a mutual aid agreement to where we have gone into Boulder and supported them in some of their wildland issues. But that's a part of this mutual aid agreement. Once it's outside the metro area, the rules change a little bit. We made the decision in March to only send 1 crew out. And that was to minimize the exposure to potential COVID. We're continuing that practice. We have had people in support of the East Troublesome Fire. We have a crew right now deployed, I think, to the Cameron Peak Fire. They're usually deployed for 2 weeks at a time, and then they come back, and then we can status up another team if we have people available. But we're monitoring that. We have people that are on vacation. We have people that are out because of COVID, and we have minimum staffing standards that we have to support. So the first thing to go for us would be those wildland deployment teams and that sort of thing. But, we're seeing pretty good containment on the fires. The Cameron Peak Fire, which was pretty big, is about 92% contained, according to information that I have from the State Division of Fire Prevention and Control. The East Troublesome Fire, we did have one of our individuals, I think it was the East Troublesome Fire, lost his home in that fire. It was very tragic. And so, we're doing what we can to support this individual. The latest information I have is that fire is just shy of 200,000 acres and it's 37% contained. The Middle Fork Fire is still relatively small, 60% contained. The Williams Fork Fire is even smaller at 76% containment. And the Calwood Fire is just a little over 10,000 acres, and it's 76% contained. So the fires are still going. We used to have a much more defined wildland fire season in Colorado, but many people, and I'm kind of that same opinion, thinks it might be a year-round event now. And Colorado is at high risk for wildland fires. It's been dry for a number of years. We're continually hearing from our climate people that we're entering this new drought phase, and that's not going to help us. But it's been an interesting year with the fires, because our largest fires are occurring this year, and the COVID challenges. And then for us, the services that we provide from an emergency services side haven't diminished. They haven't gone down. And it has been unfortunate that we've had to curtail our public interaction. Our people really look forward to it. The children, the homeowners, the business people, we enjoy that relationship. And it's just unfortunate that we've had to curtail some of that. But we do have services available online. I would encourage you to search out through Twitter as well as Facebook, our online. We're providing a lot of fire prevention information, a lot of education that people can utilize to better protect themselves from an injury standpoint, from a fire standpoint, from an illness standpoint. So that's kind of the Westminster Fire Department in a nutshell on Friday the 13th. So I was a little nervous when you asked me to show up on the 13th. I'm like, whoa, is there something going on here?
Well, I think this year has just thrown us so many things at this point. The 13th on a Friday is just so relevant, right?
I'm not surprised by anything now.
We have a lot. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, we'll roll with the punches, whatever they are. And we have several folks that are hopped in with us. I see Councilor Voles on here. I see Dominique. I see Mario and a few others that are tuning into the broadcast. Thank you guys for coming on. If you are just now tuning in, we have the City of Westminster's Fire Chief, Doug Hall, who shared a number of items for us. He really started off by explaining a little bit about the interaction between the fire department and our business community. He then moved into what COVID has looked like for them, from numbers to support for their staff and how they've maintained health, safety, and guidelines as they've continued to run their operation. And then moving into some of the fires, reciprocity among other communities, and what that looks like as far as some of the fires that we've been hearing online. I've done my best in trying to capture some of the information that he's shared into the comment section of this broadcast, but don't hold me to any of this. If I've messed up on one thing or another, please make sure that you rewind and rewatch some of those parts. So at this point, we are taking up any comments or questions. So if you are just now hopping on, you have any questions for our fire chief, please do type it in. Doug, I have a few questions that are a couple comments, one question that came through, and then I personally have a few questions on some of the information that you've shared. So if you're okay with them, I'm just going to go ahead and backtrack a little bit. I see Councilor Voles had given us a nice good morning message our way. He also commented a little bit later, so I'll pull that here in a minute. And then Linda has shared, so Linda is with a business. So this would have been earlier on. We were really talking about how once COVID started unfolding, you made the executive order to tell everyone no visitors, no outside. It is strictly our employees that are there at the fire department and they're getting stuff done. And even when they're engaging with one another, they're wearing masks, otherwise they're isolated from one another. So I think this question kind of probably sparked around this time, is there's a lot of community members that always want to give thanks and appreciation to our fire departments and the team members that are there. Linda is with a company. I'll say it because they're a member of ours, but she is with an insurance agency that's in our area. So she is interested in supporting you guys by providing food and some things like that. What does that look like?
Well, there's 2 or 3 parts to that answer. Certainly, thank you. We certainly appreciate that consideration, and it is appreciated. But I also feel obligated to tell you it's not necessarily something that, well, it makes us a little bit uncomfortable, just because we recognize there's other people out there could benefit from a free meal and that type of thing. But more to the point, it just makes us a little hesitant during these times. We obviously understand, or I'm assuming that we're talking about providing some type of box lunch or something like that. If you want to consider doing something like that, I would suggest calling fire administration during Monday through Thursday's business hours. There should be somebody available to answer the phone if they're tied up, because we're minimizing people in the fire administration. So there could be the possibility you could call and get the voicemail. But generally, there's somebody here that's at least making sure the lights are on or off when they need to be. But that number is 303-658-4500. If you call and talk with someone or leave a message, someone will get back to you and we'll try to coordinate that. But thank you. That's so generous, and it's much appreciated. I hate to be the one to tell you, but I think you're muted.
I am muted. You couldn't make out my lips?
Well, I was reading part of it, and
well, I was thanking you for that answer, and I have included the phone number into the comment section of this broadcast for folks to be able to dial into our fire administration. Councilor Voles did go ahead and share a big thank you to you all during this time of the wildfires and the pandemic. I mean, it is layers that he's very thankful to the frontline responders for that. So I just wanted to share that sentiment.
Thank you, Councilor.
And I'm sure you know former Mayor Pro Tem Alberto Garcia. Wow. He's thanking you, Chief, for your hard work. and your department, your amazing department, for keeping our city safe. So thank you,
you,
Alfredo, for hopping on here.
Thank you.
So Doug, I shared with you that you had a variety of comments that I was very intrigued about. One, thank you for giving the statistics on these fires, because I think when there's less noise, right, we feel like it's completely gone. And that's not the case in some parts. I mean, when you're looking at 30% containment on the east part, that's still a number of them that are still going pretty strong. So I was glad that you shared a little bit more about that. You mentioned to me that your fire calls and your response to some of those services are set to surpass last year. Can you tell me a little bit about what that looks like in terms of the types of outreach efforts that people are making to you, or some of those calls that you're going on? And I understand if you can't go into full detail on certain things, but if you can give us like a 3,000 foot perspective of that.
Absolutely. Well, as most know, the community, the city of Westminster, continues to grow. And either you have that growth, you have that same sort of proportional increase, and the increase isn't large. We're annually, over the last few years, we're seeing about a 3 to 5% increase in the number of calls. But another factor is that we've seen over the recent 4 or 5 years a number of senior housing centers open up. Seniors demand more medical care. When I've been the fire chief for 10 years, and when I was appointed in 2011, we were running just a hair over 8,000 calls. So over that 10-year period, you can see we've had a substantial increase. There's been a fairly substantial increase in the population. The streets have become more congested. People fuss about the traffic congestion. More traffic equals more traffic accidents. One of the other significant factors that we've been identifying, is related to our senior residents. Our senior population, and I'm getting into that arena myself, are living longer. They're living longer, healthier. The medical profession, the medications, the medical treatments have allowed ill people with chronic health conditions to live longer, and they're living longer in their homes than they ever did in past generations. So we have that uptick, and one of the things that we're really striving for is to be more data centric. A couple of years ago, Westminster, the city of Westminster's fire department became accredited through the Center for Public Safety Excellence. And like any accreditation process, it's all about numbers and benchmarks and that type of thing. So it's really driven us into this mindset of asking the questions why. Your question is right on the money. We ask that question of ourselves. Why are we seeing an increase here? Why are we seeing an increase there? Interestingly, I was just informed early this week by our fire investigator that we have exceeded the threshold for structure fires of 100 just here in the last week or two, which is in excess of what we experienced in previous years. So I asked that question, whoa, why is that? And some of it, a small number of that, is arson fires, as is always the case. But more people under these COVID conditions are at home. So that would naturally mean there's more home activity with cooking, with smoking, with candles, etc., barbecue fires, etc. More people are home for longer periods of time. That translates generally into more fires, and that's what we're experiencing. And in Westminster, we're pretty fortunate because we've had in place for a number of years a very comprehensive business fire safety inspection program. We don't have a lot of fires in business or commercial occupancies, and the fire loss is pretty minimal there. The challenge that we have are residential fires in apartments, multifamily dwellings, homes, and that type of thing.
Well, thank you for emphasizing that and providing us with those statistics as well. It's always nice to hear that our businesses are trying to, do their part and cover their ends. But it's nice. I'm very much like you. If I had seen that spike up, I'm like, how did that happen? Where did it come from? But it makes total sense. And I'm also going to put a plug in here. Most of you know that our Dine Local campaign kicked off. So if you are setting off fires by cooking at home, maybe you should just put away your cooking gadgets and order delivery and support local. So you can minimize that as well. Doug, thank you also for going in a little bit of detail on COVID and being fully transparent with the numbers. I was very pleased that you shared, there are a few folks in your in your staff that actually had experienced some symptoms. And then you also shared, about 2 to 3 that had tested positive. That does look like about a 2% based on my numbers, right? If I'm looking at about the 143 up to that you have in staff, you're looking about a 2%. Interaction from COVID, which I think is, a comfortable, right? Like it's not too concerning. It's obviously concerning because any one person that has it is something that could potentially be transferred to the other employees that are there, to any of the residents that they're dealing with. So it definitely is weighted heavily. But I was pleased to hear that it wasn't something that has engulfed your whole team.
Right. Well, we have a pretty well entrenched self-reporting, so when people they're getting that dry throat, that scratchy throat, that respiratory congestion, they're under the expectation to report that to a supervisor. And then we have a very strong risk management approach with our workman's comp doctor, that these people, because they're first responders, they get hooked into the testing very quickly. We're pretty fortunate that we have that strong relationship and that strong program. Our people get tested relatively quickly. We get the results back, not as quickly as we'd like, but pretty doggone quick. But they're quarantined at home, or we have a contract, so to speak, with a hotel that if they're not comfortable being at home, we can put them there. But it's a pretty rigid regime, and then obviously they can't come back until after they meet a certain number of days of being self-isolated post-negative test. So we have situations where people are off, could be 2 weeks from notification, and that's a staffing issue. There is an instance where we know one of the spouses of one of our personnel is ill. He is not. He's tested negative. He can't come to work. And so once his spouse gets to that point of being negative, he's still got to isolate for 14 days. Wow. So he's going to be gone for a number of days, and they don't like it. Firefighters want to be at work. Yeah. It's, there's so many that are like, oh, we got a day off today. Firefighters want to be here. And so we guard that. We watch that pretty doggone closely, because we can't afford an outbreak at work. And they understand that. They don't like it, but they understand it. And that's all that I ask is you don't have to like it, but understand the potential risk that we have with our work group. And we can't transmit that out into the community either. That's why we wear that PPE at every opportunity. So it's a continual challenge to reinforce this, both with the public as well as with our people.
I agree. Yeah. And I thank you for going in detail, even more so on, other spouses and how that affects. And I can only imagine when you are having those increase in calls and increase in servicing, that would, potentially harm your staffing. Yep. It would create more of a problem, especially when you're keeping them away. But I admire everything that you guys do. And just my plug-in, anytime I've worked with you guys, you have been terrific. I know you send out, fire investigators and folks whenever we generally do our taste out at the Ice Center, and they are just super supportive and make sure that we get everything done that we need to. So just kudos to your team. Thank you for your visionary leadership, especially during this time of COVID. It's always challenging to be in the role that you're in, regardless. And then when you add in COVID, when you add in the fires and then this high scrutiny of everything, you are in a position that, I don't envy, but I'm here to support it. So, with that. Anyone that's tuned in, please do your part by sharing this video out so folks know exactly what our fire department is doing, how they're responding, and some of the services that they are providing. Be proud of the work that they're doing, and if you have any questions for them directly, we've included their phone number for you into the comment section of this broadcast. If you end up watching this broadcast a little bit later, you can always rewind it and rewatch and pick up some of the information out of there. Give us the hashtag replay so I know that you tuned into the broadcast whenever you have. And of course, Doug, I appreciate you taking the time to be on here, risking that it's Friday the 13th, but really having faith that it would go well. I think it did. And I hope that we can continue to connect past this. So stay with me as we close out.
Okay.